What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some DraftKings MMA DFS picks, lineup advice for UFC Vegas 57. Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot, an exciting fight. And we're here to break it down for you. FanDuel, DraftKings, best bets, tips, lineup strategies, picks, everything you need to make money on Saturday's UFC card. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. Good to be here.
As always, good to be here with you as well. So, if you're new, what we normally do here is we break down the main event from a betting and DFS perspective. We talk about the slate from a high level. I don't know what we're going to do today because there are actually no newcomers on the card, but we'll play everyone's favorite game: good fighter, good matchup, bad matchup, for those fighters who have less than 4 fights in the UFC, to give you context on all these fighters that don't have a ton of data to their name. We'll give some prize picks out. You see the promo code here, 100% deposit match bonus if you use code Occupy. Play some prop parlays. Fight that you want to target in DFS, you got to have exposure to it. Stick around for that. And then a stream parlay of the week. Lots of great stuff. Everything you need. Break down the card. All in video format here for written and data. Everything else you need, occupyfantasy.com, MMADFS.com. All the links are in the description below. Not going to bore you with the details. They're great resources. Go check them out. Let's get started with the main event. And, Jake, we've had a lot of big names on the cards recently for main events, a lot of names that the casual fans would know. But to me, this is one of the most exciting main events that we could have because we have two pretty much up and comers that are both really good and not a ton of losses to their names. So we got Tsarukyan versus Gamrot. Give me the breakdown on this fight and what it means for DFS.
Yeah, man, this is a really exciting main event. I think anyone that, watches every week is excited about this. Maybe the Fairweather fans that don't know the names are less excited, but this is going to be a good one. Both these guys are, have been looking great lately. We got Tsarukyan coming in, 25 years old, 18-2 pro record, 5-1 in the UFC. His only loss, I believe, in his last 18 fights was in his UFC debut against Islam Makhachev, and he's the only person to fight Islam tough. He went 3 rounds. It's actually a close fight, which is crazy if you watch Islam in all of his other fights. Um, the guy's coming off 5 straight wins since that loss. He's landed 2 straight knockouts, 3 huge scores on DraftKings. Just been crushing it lately. Really coming into his own. Still a young guy, improving between every fight. Like, completely jacked, just looking great. And then we got him going against Gamrot. Gamrot's a little bit older, 31, 20-1 pro record, 3-1 in the UFC. His only loss also came in his UFC debut. Split decision. Most people, or at least a lot of people, thought he won that decision against Guram Kutaladze. That was a good fight. I mean, even after the fight, Guram was like, "Yeah, Gamrot won." So I mean, hard to say that Gamrot didn't win when his opponents being like, "Yeah, Gamrot won." But easily could be 21-0, multi-time, record holder. I think in KSW, Polish fighter. I believe his last 4 fights before joining the UFC were all 5-round title fights. A couple different weight classes. This guy's got a ton of experience. So the experience edge definitely goes to Gamrot here. He's proven that he has 5 rounds of cardio. It's actually going to be Tsarukyan's first 5-round fight of his career. So I think that's pretty interesting. Both guys have trained down at an American Top Team in the past. Gamrot's still training there, whereas Tsarukyan actually trained on the West Coast for this. So his preparation was a little bit different. I mean, who knows how that's going to affect the fight, but these guys are somewhat familiar with each other. And also, Tsarukyan normally trains in Russia as well, and he didn't go back, with everything going on. After his last fight, he just stayed in Vegas. So definitely different preparation all around for Tsarukyan here, but still comes in as the big favorite, regardless. So in terms of DFS, I think you're going to want to stack this one on DraftKings in low risk contests only. I think that we're probably going to see a decent combined score. I would say there's a pretty good chance that it goes the distance just based on how durable both these guys have been. So both guys should have a pretty decent floor. I think in high risk, I think there are a lot of ways that Tsarukyan can get outscored by the other expensive options. So, going against a tough guy like Gamrot, maybe we see more of a wrestling stalemate than we have in some of Sarukyan's past fights, which, both these guys rely really heavily on their wrestling. They're not high volume strikers. So, I mean, they both kind of need their wrestling to score well. So if we do see a stalemate, that's going to lower the ceiling for the winner. So, given their price tags, it would be a lot easier for Gamrot to still end up in tournament winning lineups, you know, with a win. Whereas Tsarukyan, if he doesn't really go off, look at the other options in the 9K price range. I think it's going to be tougher for him to get there without probably a well-timed finish or to just dominate in the wrestling. If he comes in and dominates Gamrot, if it doesn't end up being a close fight, then sure, he can score a ton of points. I mean, he showed that in his last 3 fights. So I think that's my overall take on things.
So a couple things. One, Tsarukyan landed 13 significant strikes against Islam Makhachev, which is the equivalent of 200 significant strikes against any other opponent, right? So impressive showing on short notice debut. Got to give him credit for that. And yeah, the 5-round experience is super interesting for Gamrot. So that's certainly valuable if this fight goes past the 3rd round. And like you said, it could be a wrestling stalemate. I know our model isn't really high on either one of these guys, and I think that's part of the reason. Both guys are generally pretty tough to hit or have been pretty tough to hit. The one way this ends up exploding is one is way better of a wrestler than we ever expected compared to their opponent, or two, we actually get a bunch of reverses on DraftKings where the guys take it down, they scramble a bunch, we end up getting multiple reverses in a sequence, and then we get some huge scores from these guys. But in general, the model does think that it could end up being on the lower side, and just in the context of the slate where these guys are going to be so popular, and we already have 2 incredibly popular options at the top. Then there's some room for differentiation there if you fade the main event. I guess before we move on, Jake, since we don't have a newcomer to talk about, we should talk about this slate in particular, about how Nurmagomedov, Rakhmonov, and I guess Tsarukyan as well are going to be extremely popular on all sites, but especially DraftKings. And we've seen slates like this in the past where these guys end up 40% plus, and it's really hard to make unique lineups. And all these guys have great cases to be that highly owned.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like normally when we get guys that, multiple guys approaching 50% owned, if you play 2 of those, it's going to be really hard to make a unique lineup. So you really got to take a stand here and figure out, which of these guys are going to go off, which guys can bust, which guys can get outscored even with a win. I think there's going to be a lot of fine lines here to thread, and you really got to pay attention to avoiding dupes, or else you might find yourself in like a 50-way split.
Yeah, and again, maybe you want that. Maybe you're okay with that. But you will not be invited back to watch this show if that happens to you. So just keep that in mind as you're building lineup. So, all right, again, no newcomers. So let's talk about fighters that have less than 4 UFC fights to their name. Let me clear the lineup card here. We're going to go from highest to lowest price on DraftKings. And I'm going to say their name. Jake's going to tell me whether or not they're a good fighter or a bad fighter, and whether this is a good matchup or a bad matchup for DFS scoring. The most expensive fighter on the card, he's like minus 1,000, Umar Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, he's definitely a good fighter. It's not the best matchup just based on Manus. Manus is a solid takedown defense, but I would say it's still a good matchup just because I think Nate is somewhat of a fraud. I might be alone on that in some circles, but I'm going to say good fighter, good matchup.
So I would assume on the flip side there, since Manus has just 3 UFC fights, that he is what you would consider a bad fighter and definitely a bad matchup.
Definitely a bad matchup. If he comes out and gets a knockout here, I'm still going to be calling him a fluke, but maybe he'll slowly be approaching good fighter.
All right, what about Rakhmonov, who has just bulldozed people through 3 UFC fights?
Yeah, I would say good fighter. I don't think it's a really good matchup. I mean, Magny has been finished in a bunch of his losses, but he's still pretty durable. You have as many fights as him, you're going to get finished. So I would say good fighter, bad matchup.
Fair enough. All right. Who we got here? Let's keep scrolling. TJ Brown, does he have? Nope, he's got 4. He doesn't qualify. Chris Curtis, been looking to fade him. Been absolutely destroying bankrolls the past 2 fights, but 2 fights under his belt. What's his outlook?
Yeah, that's a weird one, man. I don't think he's a bad fighter, but he's definitely kind of a one-dimensional striker. And, going against a world-class jiu-jitsu guy, that's not really where you want to be. But it's a good matchup in the sense that if he lands one clean shot, I mean, he's going to get a knockout. So that one's sort of weird. I think you could go either way on both cases. I could call Curtis a bad fighter because he's not well-rounded, and a bad matchup because he's probably going to get subbed. Or I can call him a good fighter because he knocks everyone out, and he's going against a guy that's super fragile. So that's a tough one. But
floor of 0, ceiling of 100 plus for both of these guys in this matchup. So.
Yeah, that's a weird
let's
one.
see. What about this heavyweight slop fest? Alan Baudot, Josh Parisian, both these guys just 3 UFC fights, both fighting for their lives here. Give me good Good fighter, bad fighter. I know the answer on that for both of them. And the matchup here.
I mean, both guys are clearly terrible, but because they're both terrible, it's a great matchup for both of them.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the fight. I can't believe that fight is that's the co-main, right? Somehow, no,
The third, whatever you call that,
it's on the main card somehow. So, all right, what about
quarter
Carlos Ulberg?
quarter, yeah, the quarterfinal main or whatever. um, Ulberg, Ulberg's sort of like Curtis, but less proven. One-dimensional striker, no cardio. So I think while you can definitely call Curtis is a good fighter. Ulberg, I think we still have to call him a bad fighter. And I know Nchukwu got knocked out in the third round of his last fight, but I'm still going to call that a bad matchup.
Okay, fair enough. JP Bays.
I think that's a bad fighter in a good matchup.
All right, I mean he's been knocked down 100 times, and
Literally.
you got to be bad if that's the case. I think we got them all here. Oh, Nurdan Becca against TJ Brown, Shylon.
I think that is a bad fighter in potentially a good matchup based on how fragile Brown has been. I think you missed Demopoulos, though.
We're getting to her. Don't worry. We got Vanessa
Okay.
Demopoulos rounding out the card at 7K.
I just wanted to make sure I pointed out that she was a bad fighter in a bad matchup.
Wow, never let that opportunity pass. So there we go. That is it. I think we got them all. And if you have any more questions, you can always ask us in Discord. But that pretty much sums it up. So, Jake, we mentioned the JP Bays matchup against Cody Durden. That's probably a fight that you want some exposure to in your DFS lineups, right? It's a fight that we want to target for our tournaments.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the best fight on the card to target. Bays has been knocked down 7 times in 4.5 rounds of action, which I don't even know how that's possible.
Yep.
But somehow it's true.
You and I could go in there and not get knocked down 7 times. Granted, it would only take one to get us out of there, but we wouldn't get knocked down 7 times.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely nuts. Both guys that have gone against Bays have scored over 130 DraftKings points. One of those was in a decision, one was in a second round knockout. I mean, just totally crazy. And on the other side, you have Cody Durden, who every time he goes against a grappler gets submitted in the first round. I mean, the dude got dunked on by Jimmy Flick with a flying triangle. I mean, and then 58-second guillotine submission in his last fight. So Cody Durden's I think he's a Georgia 2-time high school state champion wrestler. Apparently no jiu-jitsu. He just gets subbed every time he goes against a grappler. So I think it's a good matchup for Bays and a good matchup for Durden there.
I will say, though, I don't think JP Bays is on the level of Jimmy Flick or Muhammad Makayev, right?
Yeah, in fairness, Jimmy Flick retired after one fight in the UFC. So I mean, who knows what level he's on?
Dude, he was good though. He was good before he retired.
he just dunked on Durden and then retired.
Yeah,
I mean, pretty baller move. Yeah, right. Just mic dropped it.
All right. Anyways, this fight could go either way, right? So
it could go either way. I still like Bay's side. I've been backing him his last 2 fights, full disclosure, and they haven't gone well. I'm tripling down here.
Attaboy. Never back down. All right. Prize Picks play. We had a slam dunk one last time with Adrian Yanez. Almost got it in the first round, but sucks for Tony Kelly. Could not survive the first round. Bad line prevails for Prize Picks, but still some soft lines. Another great line that we really like this week. Jake puts all of his favorite plays in the premium content at MMADFS.com. He picks some of his favorites to put in the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. And again, use code Occupy to get a 100% deposit match bonus. Get some free money to go play with him and make some of these parlays. So, Jake, what stands out to you this week as a line that really doesn't add up?
There's 2 that I really like. I think I'm going to stick with the Brown over 87.5 points just to stay on brand here. I mean, I think if he wins, he scores more than that. The guy's a negative 225 favorite. You have to like that line. There's another one that I really like, but I'm going to leave that on a plug for people to check out. It's the second one on there. I think it's basically a lock if she wins, and she's also a huge favorite.
That limits it, but you can probably figure it out from there. But go check out the daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com. And she's also probably the best tournament play on the entire card. But that is well within my brand to say that. So, Jake, let's close it out with our stream parlay of the week. I let it down last week. I'm going to get it back this week. And we've been talking about TJ Brown. He's the cover boy of the daily plug. My side, I'll go TJ Brown inside the distance. Pretty good odds there. So I'll use that. What are you going to pair it with, and what does that give us for odds?
Yeah, I think that is a pretty good line. It's plus 250 at MGM. I know some other places have it at like plus 240. I think that's a good bet. Considering his money line is negative, what did I say, negative 225, and I think like 13 of his 16 career wins have come early. I think that's a pretty solid line. I like Gamrot decision here at plus 550. I think with the experience, I think if he can survive the initial maybe 2, maybe 3 rounds, I think there's a really good chance he takes over in the later rounds. So at plus 550, gotta like Gamrot decision. I think that's going to be a closer fight than odds suggest. So if we do those two, that should be plus 2175.
All right. I got to say, like, even if the odds are correct, which they probably are, right? But even if they are correct, that decision line doesn't add up for me. I think that his decision equity is a lot more than what the books are giving him credit for.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, Tsarukyan, he went to a decision against Islam. Like, is Gamrot really going to finish him?
There you go. That'll do it. So, all right, for more MMA, DFS, picks, lineup advice, bets, here's the resources. Go to MMADFS.com. That's Jake's site. He writes the sheet every single week, betting and DFS implications for every single fight with historical background info. Also has premium content. The archive is an invaluable resource to research past slates. I use it every single week. Make sure you go check that out. Jake also writes a daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. Top plays for FanDuel and DraftKings, lineup construction tips, his favorite bets, contest selection, everything you need to dominate a slate is in the daily plug. Links in the description below. Our Occupy model, which ranks every fighter, FanDuel, DraftKings. People around the industry are starting to catch on. They're starting to sign up. They're starting to use it. So make sure you don't miss out on that advantage. Go check out the model, the most predictive MMA projections tool that you could possibly find. And our lineup builder allows you to build up to 300 lineups for FanDuel or DraftKings using our optimal lineup criteria. So you can follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. You can follow me at Brian Jester FF. You can follow us at Occupy Fantasy. If you like what you saw, make sure you give us a subscribe and a like here on YouTube to get notified whenever we upload any new UFC video. So for Jake, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening and good luck at UFC Vegas 57.